Well, the weather may have been sizzling in July, but economic growth was basically frozen. The chill in the gross domestic product is the latest evidence of the power of stubborn inflation and soaring interest rates meant to tackle that inflation. Jeannie Lee here with more on that. Jeannie, we are seeing that impact, and where are we seeing it the most?
Well, in the mirror, Hannah, and also in our bank balances. The fact is, consumers are the ones that drive the economy the most, and we have been driving a lot less than we had been, and in July, in fact, a lot less than expected. There was a consensus that there would be a little bit of growth in July, but none happened overall, and here is how it broke down. Activity that was hurt during the wildfires earlier in the year was supposed to bounce back in the month, and some of it did, but then you had the BC port strike, which took away any of those gains. Then you had manufacturing, which definitely took a big hit because the port strike meant that parts of the supply chain began to break down. Retail sales, meanwhile, shrank for the 6th month in a row. This is a big consumer area, obviously. Retail makes up 2/3 of the economy. So consumers are behind that. Consumers weren't really into that. Now, housing also hit the brakes because activity sank for the first time since January, because you'll remember that earlier in the summer there were 2 surprise rate hikes, and that definitely slammed the brakes on what was starting to be a bit of a resurgence in the housing market. And the early prediction for August from the StatsCan is for minimal growth of 0.1%. Barely any growth at all. And this follows no growth in July. This means that it's a tough time for people, and you can see why. Hard to pay those mortgage payments and rent checks when all those payments have ballooned with higher interest rates. Food costs that much more. Gasoline is rising again. And this economist points out how all of that is really hurting the consumer.
That was also another important part to note about that is also the fact that that was largely actually driven by slower consumer demand. So we saw a similar sort of decline in household consumption in the same quarter. Again, it's just everything's finally pointing to kind of more evidence piling up that earlier pretty rapid and aggressive Bank of Canada rate hikes are finally having their very much intended consequences on the economy.
Not that I have to remind you, but there were 10 rate hikes in 18 months, and that of course was to cool inflation, but higher rates also cool growth, and that is also happening.
So how is this quarter shaping up, Jeannie?
So we've talked about the first month of the quarter. That would be July, no growth. August looks like there will be hardly any growth. So this month, September, has to be some kind of barn burner for the entire quarter to show the kind of growth that even the Bank of Canada was expecting, in the order of 1.5%. Now, this chart that I'm about to show you shows you just how things have been weakening quarter after quarter, just about in the last 2 years. And you'll see that last bar, 0.2% shrinkage. That was the rate of growth for the economy in the second quarter. If we have more shrinkage or a bit of a very flat result, even if we match that result, that would be the technical definition of a recession. Really, it has to be much deeper with entrenched job losses to be an actual recession. But no matter what you call it, this hurts and this is painful, and that for some people is good enough for them when it comes to just how bad things are.